Growth Pains.
Hey everybody, welcome to this new episode of Growth Pains, where we talk about how we all screw up when trying to grow our businesses. I'm your host, Ignacio Gallegos, also known as Nacho. Today we'll be talking about topics such as balancing important, urgent versus important, non-urgent work, getting lost in the details, moving fast without causing issues that will haunt you later, and innovating in highly saturated markets. My guest today is a good friend of mine, Khizar Naeem. And previously he was a product manager at Start, so working with yours truly side by side. And now he's doing his thing at the Netherlands' latest unicorn, or maybe there's a new one by the time we record this, but MessageBird. So welcome, man. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's really been a while since things went down, the lockdown. We haven't really had a chance to catch up.
Yeah. We're gonna get now, so no worries. That's okay. Let's just start like easing you into it. You know how this goes. You're a listener from what you were telling me. So we usually start with talking about something that you're really, really bad at. So what is that one for you?
What I'm really, really bad at, I consider myself bad at, or where I think I need the most improvement, is being concise, man. It's like in my speech, talking to somebody, delivering the message in the shortest way possible and still being super clear about it. Yeah. And that's like a constant improvement thing for me.
Yeah, I can definitely not help you with that one. I think I'm absolutely awful at that one. I tend to speak all over the place. So, but I see the value, right? Like especially in communications, I see the wiser the people you speak to and the more senior they are, you realize that they are more and more concise. Like when you're exchanging emails or whatever, I tend to send these massive emails, and then you get like, sure, let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you're definitely seeing that it's a skill that, well, people don't have time, right? So you're gonna spend time reading or listening to somebody jab for an hour. Your day runs short really quickly.
Exactly, and there's so much time in a day that you have. So for example. I've listened to the founder of Superhuman speaking.
Yeah.
And every time I listen to him, I'm
Rahul.
like, damn. Yeah, it's like, God damn, how do you deliver such a message so precisely? It's like sniped at something.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to listen.
Yeah, I think from my guests at the podcast, maybe the one that's better at that is Wes Kao. I think I don't know if you listened to that episode, but for everybody listening, I would really recommend it.
I actually started that and didn't get to finish it.
Yeah, she's great. Like you ask something and she tells you exactly, like she answers directly to the point in like a few seconds. I would go around the bushes for like half an hour before I deliver any answer, if any, in that whole speech. But I understand that pain. Okay, let's get to the true or false, dude. So I have a bunch of product management ones for you. Okay. Let's see. So first one, done is better than perfect. True or false?
True. Yeah.
You feel that way?
Yeah, I used to be a perfectionist. When I started my.
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, that's why I put it in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you know, and it's also like you can perfect things so much to a certain point, and also it gives you a lot of anxiety. So I've learned that hey, just put things out there. It doesn't mean they need to be. Excuse me. They need to be like wonky and not working, and then you are like, yeah, done. Not perfect, but done. It's like you press a button, it's broken, or so on. You install a door and it doesn't work. Yeah. It's more like get it out, iterate over it, and it will evolve over time. If you get into the making it perfect, it's never going to be perfect,
No, it's a rabbit hole. Like it never ends.
I've come around to that. Learning.
All right. Let's see. I'm gonna ask people in MessageBird if that's the case. Huh? I'm gonna be sending a survey.
Feel free to send emails.
Okay. The next one. Product managers are the CEOs of their products. True or false?
True, but with the caveat. Let me explain that. When you say that product manager is a CEO of product, people think it has a wrong message attached to it. I don't mean it that acting like a CEO where I can tell people what to do.
Yeah.
I mean about the CEO with the part of taking full ownership of everything that has to do with your product, delivering value to your customers, making sure it has business impact, assessing all the risk, and most importantly, making sure that you take everybody together and move forward, so you're not like ordering around it. I would probably call it product managers are founders of their product.
Yeah.
The founder mindset is a lot more different than CEO mindset.
Yeah. But that's also a misconception, right? Because even when you're the CEO, like God, even if you're the president, right? Like you just don't call any shot you want. Like as you add more people beneath you, yeah, sure. If you're 2 people, sure, you can call the shots. But if you're 10, 20, 30, 400, 1,000, there's people that you hire to do certain jobs that sure, you have some input, but at the end of the day, they own their jobs, right? So I think in that way, there's also a misconception that the CEO just says, like Sundar Pichai would come tomorrow in Google and say, hey, just add this in Gmail. Like that's not the way it goes,
That's not how it works. But exactly, I'm pretty sure you have gotten this somewhere in your career where somebody hired you and then they wanted to do marketing for you and they wanted to tell you how to do marketing. No, let me do my job. And that's like exactly the thing as PM. You can't tell people to do. Your job is to uncover basically unknowns and then collaborate with the team to put out the product that creates value for the customers.
Yeah. All right. This one, I think it's an interesting one. So the more features you pack into a product, the more your customers will like it. True or false?
False.
Yeah, right? But that's a common misconception, right? You feel like the more advanced, also the notion of advanced is mixed with the amount of shit that you put in it, which is not correlated directly like that.
Exactly. And take a real life example, man. If you buy, I'm just going to pick a random thing, microwave, a microwave, something you use to just get something warmed up, But then we've seen these microwaves which has like thousands of buttons on them and we don't know what they do. And it's like, do you like a microwave?
They have Wi-Fi now. I know.
So that's the point. Like your product shouldn't have like endless features, and nobody's gonna say that, hey, this is my value proposition I want to get out of this product, but it doesn't have just for the sake of example Wi-Fi in it, so I'm not gonna buy it.
Yeah.
And that's indeed a misconception, and it's there for many reasons. Sometimes your product is super early in the market and it doesn't have feature parity. So somebody who you're trying to drag away from a competitor, they might have certain feature which your product might not have, and then that's where this kind of is relevant. But then the challenge is how do you navigate that challenge rather than keep adding every single feature so your product doesn't become this mess of just a bunch of features,
And you add complexity, right? Like with more features, more complexity, and then I cannot find anymore the feature that I used to like because it's buried between all this other stuff that you added, right? So that's also tricky. Last one, and let's see how you go with this one. Customers are always right. True or false?
Yeah, so this is black and white, right?
Yeah. Well, You can always explain later, but just pick your...
I'm going to explain, but I am going to say... This is a hard one. I'm going to say yes, but but this is why. Customers are right in a way that they know what they want. When a customer is coming to you, they're coming to you with a problem. But they are not always right in how they communicate that to you. Let's say they come to you and say that I want to buy your product, but they are doing a feature request. They might bring it across completely differently than what they actually mean.
Yeah.
And that's your job as a product manager, like my job as a product manager, to uncover the why behind this. And that's why I think customers are always right in terms of the intent, but they might not be literally right. If they say that, hey, let's take for the example sake, since we both worked at Start, like add a 5-page survey. They are not right in a way. They're right with the intent that they want to achieve something, but they might not be right that doesn't fit with what you deliver as a product at start. So it's your job as a PM to uncover the why behind it. Like, why are they coming up with this request? How can we help them?
Yeah. David Ogilvy famously said once, people don't think what they feel, they don't say what they think, and then they don't do what they say. Right. And that's the problem, right? It's the same in marketing with customer research. Like, I think the key of it all is that no source of truth is the source of truth, right? So you have to gather the customer input, the team input, the whole thing, put it in a blender and try to get the insights from that, right? Because, also, well, I don't know, like 10 years ago, we all wanted a computer with a CD drive, and Steve Jobs said, you know what, I'm going to take it off. Like, what? We cried for a year and then we forgot about it, and now no computer has it, right? So in a way, you also have, like, well, they used to say, like, customers don't know what they want, but I think there is some truth in it, in a way that you always have to listen to customers, of course, but you need to mix it with all sorts of sources of truth, right, to make decisions. All right,
exactly.
Man.
Yeah,
Good.
You're an educator also. I think that's how I also look at my role.
Yeah.
That you are an educator, not in the sense of, again, telling you what to do and telling you what's right, but in terms of, like, how do we educate the mindset?
Yeah, exactly. You have a problem. I think I know how you can solve it, and this is how, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, man. The other one, it's the first pain we're going to talk about today. It's related to prioritization, right? But I like the way you put it together, because we've discussed prioritizing here a few times. I think it's a really common pain, but also that you mentioned that it's separating between things that are important and urgent versus things that are important but non-urgent. Right. And that's a completely different thing, because it seems like a really silly play of words. But at the end of the day, what happens is that most of the things in your agenda or on your request desk or whatever, they're all important. Right. Yeah. And this is why prioritizing is so difficult, because everything seems important. So tell me a little bit about the pain that you have in this area, or that you've had in the past.
Yeah. I think in general, everybody has felt this point at some point, and everybody does feel it at some point in their daily work life. As a product manager, what I felt is that, okay, at the end, what you're trying to do is create a product which delivers value and you can make money out of it. Otherwise your business doesn't exist. Yeah. So that's where this urgent and important comes from. The important is, like, that helps you achieve your vision, the where you are moving as like a company, as a product. And it might not be urgent, but on the other hand, you have urgent things which might not be that important aligned to your visions, but you need to do that, So, you can also put it out in another context. You might need to put out a fire, which is urgent, but it's not. You can also say that, it's not important, it's not my job, and all that. But it's super urgent, and then if you don't deal with it, it's gonna come back to bite you.
All right. So on those grounds, like, what in your criteria, and I guess this is an ever evolving thing, right? But what makes something urgent when it comes to product work for in your mind, right? What are the things that say, like, I need to address this right now?
Well, yeah, urgent thing is that, let's say, if your customers are having issue with your product, if the product is not working as it's supposed to, or if it's having issues, or you have customers that are about to churn for whatever reason. It's in your best interest that it's urgent and important at the same time. So you can take it the 4 ways: urgent, important, not urgent, important, then not urgent, not important, and then the other ones. Sorry, there's so many.
No, I get it, and that's what it's called, like this, like Eisenhower matrix, right? That is called like it's because it's based on how Eisenhower used to make decisions. The president, basically, which you have like urgent, not urgent, important, not important, is like 4 quadrants. But the problem, the problem with this is that, well, also I think Eisenhower said it's like, what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important, right? So if you're very loose about those criterias, then you're going to consider everything urgent and important, right? Yeah, so exactly. You have to have some sort of a framework there. Is this something that you think about standardizing in your daily work, or is it something that you take it as it goes and you deal with it as the requests come in, right? Or do you have a clear framework on what's urgent or not?
I would love to have a framework, man, but
yeah, it's not that easy. It's easier said than done.
I'm not that structured of a person as much as I would like to be. But here's the thing: what I do, something we all deal with every day is email. So in Gmail, I have created labels like the important and then not urgent, and then the urgent ones, and then I color code them so that every time I'm there, it's kind of part of my to-do list.
Yeah.
My actual to-do list lives in another place. So that's one way I try to deal with it. You know, if there's basically a customer, something related to a customer going on, then I might label it accordingly. But if there is something that I need to review, which is directly related to the product I'm working on, but I know it can wait, but it's super important that I review this or I delete my comments on it, I'll move it to the important label, so that later on when I have that space, I can visit it. Because as a product manager, everything comes your way. It's like especially when you're like in a high growth company.
Yeah.
Like there's way too much coming your way, and it's like it can be overwhelming. So, and that's how I try to deal with it. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm really good at it. It's just that's how I try to deal with it, and it's a huge pain, and I think it's a lot of people suffer with it in their daily work life or outside work life also. And the sooner you learn to deal with it, the better it becomes for you.
Well, I think there's also an issue that, well, as you said, right? I'm not that organized in that way. People work differently, right? And also, what's tricky is when these criteria are differently, because if I consider a subset of things urgent that you completely don't, because our criteria are completely different, then we're always going to be dissatisfied with each other, right? I'm going to call you up and say, dude, this is the most fundamental thing you should do today. And you're gonna be like, well, that's like number 10 in my priority list, right? Yeah. Is this something in the organizations you work with that you feel like organizations proactively work towards, or you're just always putting down fires and you never really get to like put these things into actual standards and words and communicate it across?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. No organization can achieve a framework where they can sort of spoon feed these things to every worker. Now, imagine you join a company and they are like, hey, this is how we deal with urgent and important. Every time somebody asks you a question, you need to align with them to know. Yeah. It's like
fill in this form.
Babies. Sorry?
Fill in this form to make people fill in a form and
Or like babysitting. It feels like babysitting, like lack of ownership if you are told to be put in this framework. And to be honest, if you talk about where I'm working, MessageBird, things are moving so fast that there is no place for setting these frameworks. So like it comes down to you as an individual, that how do you manage that? How do you get that context? So for me, let's say it's more important that if these things are coming my way, aligning on it from people that, okay, what exactly is the deadline on it? And based on that, taking that into consideration. And also based on that, it's like you can't do everything. Like you are not the only person in the world. So sometimes you need to take something delegated and then hold that person responsible for it. And that's the other thing about being a PM, that you are nobody's manager, but you have to have that influence of delegating certain things and then making sure that they still move forward.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that was entirely on your point that you made.
Well, we just said you're not concise, right? So it's okay. People, the audience is prepared. The audience is prepared for these kind of answers. But in a way, what's tricky about this, right? It's like when we think about prioritizing, we always think about tasks, right? So I have to do a bazillion things. What do I do first? On the other hand, though, it's not only tasks that you prioritize; it's also stakeholders. Because let's be honest, right? Like when the UX designer says, dude, I would love to implement this new field in the onboarding flow, it's quite easy to say no to him. But when the CEO says, I have an investor that just called me, we would love to see this, when can you have it? It's much harder to say so, right? So you're juggling in two dimensions, right? One is the things you need to do and how important they are for the business. And the other one is the amount of social capital or power that the person that has asked you has, right? Because you also need to play with those factors. Is this something that, I don't know, that you've learned throughout your career, how to make sure that, I mean, understanding that you cannot keep everybody happy, but that you have to always keep that balance between the stakeholders and everybody involved?
Yeah, so if you had asked me the list of things I'm bad at, I would have mentioned that.
That one.
This is another thing that I want to improve a lot more on. That I know I can't make everybody happy. and what I need to improve on is learning to live with it, you know. But going back to your question on balancing the different priority of stakeholders, that's where I'm working towards creating this same level of accountability, so to say, where you are able to ask the same questions to how do you say, a junior level colleague and a CEO. You know, you're able to bring them on the same page, and that's the hard part. And going back to your question about, this is something I'm able to sort of like, something in my career I learned that I tried to make everybody happy over the years. That just doesn't work, you know, because what happens is that I'm the only person who's not able to sleep at night, because I'm like, oh my God, this person hates me, and then I'm awake half the night. But over the years, I learned that, hey, no, that can't happen. You know, not everybody's going to be happy. So make sure you communicate. You make sure you communicate the intent. Make sure you communicate what's best for the company and the product. But then just, you know, sort of wash off all the worries that you have, because at the end of the day, it's like it's eating me up in the end.
Yeah, but that's where you realize also that being always the nice guy that says yes to everything sometimes bites you in the butt, right? Because you end up not delivering because you just can't deliver everything. And that's far worse than just saying no to begin with, right? Just by saying politely, like, listen, I don't think I can fit this in, right? Instead, you say yes and you under-deliver, and that makes the other person much more upset that if you were said no to begin with, right? But
exactly.
Yeah. That's
indeed,
tricky.
and that's also that changed throughout the different jobs I had over the years, different companies I worked at, different projects I was involved in outside work also.
Yeah.
You know, saying yes to everything because I don't know how to say no.
Yeah.
And that's like something, but eventually learn that, okay, one, as willing as I am to help, there are going to be 10 more people around me who are as willing. And it's good to go to those people sometime also and be like, hey, I'm really stuck on this thing and this is my priority and I can't take more. Or like explaining that exact same thing to the person who's asking you that, okay, I have too much right now going on. Can I come back to you later, or can you manage it some other way? And that's what I've learned to do it. And one of the things lately I try to move everything async. Okay, instead of like popping into a meeting, try to do things as much async as possible.
Yeah, sure. Yes. I think like if we looked at it, prioritizing, right, there's a scope of tasks, then we have the hierarchy or the stakeholders involved. And also one of the quick revenue opportunities are probably the roadmap's worst enemy, right? So when you have your sales team getting off a call, and I've seen you experience this one in real life, right? Like when you say, hey dude, I just got off a phone with massive customer. If we can just ship this, we can close this amazing deal. And that it completely derails your roadmap. Have you dealt to deal with those along the years? Like, what would you recommend for those situations? Because, sometimes it's not the best solution to spend all your resources in that golden little nugget, and you have to have a more like long-term vision, right?
Yeah, I think it helps to understand which situation is it worth to say yes to. You know, like. Imagine you say yes to a certain opportunity like this, where your sales team, you know, persuades you to change your roadmap and fit a certain thing in. Most of the time, these things align with roadmap. Most of the time, they don't. If they don't align, it's easier for you to say no. If it was part of something that you wanted to do it down the line, but you have to now move it up, it's, you know, you try to manage it. You know, like, okay, let's move this up, and then let's deprioritize. Try to create context for it. And it's also not only about saying yes to them, but it's also trying to making it so that they understand where you're coming from, and then also making your team understand where this whole situation is coming from. But going back to like how it has changed over the years, it used to be okay. I don't think people have generally bad intentions, you know. But it used to be, I used to trust.
They do.
But I think it could be that their priorities are not aligned with your priorities. You know?
Yeah.
So a salesperson could think that, okay, this feature is going to kill it, and he or she have
There's
heard
my
it.
commission. Yeah.
Not only that, but it's like if they hear the same thing 3 times, and then this one deal is super important to them, whether it's commission based or whether they really love getting this customer for the company, and it is, salespeople are not evil. It's like they're trying to move your business forward. So the point is that they could assume that, hey, this is a killer feature, and I know it's a killer feature, but you as a PM is like, okay, how do you align that with them?
Yeah.
Like, okay, if we're gonna factor this in, if we're gonna sacrifice some of our roadmap for it, how do we proceed with that? How do we create context around it for everybody? And then also saying no is that there are obvious things, like I said, if somebody asks you to build a Wi-Fi in the microwave where you don't want to, then it's an easy thing to say no to, and then I don't lose my sleep over those things. Yeah. And if something that doesn't align with your vision, or something that is like backward in the market, like including a CD-ROM, we're talking a lot about hardware product.
Yeah, no, I get
software
it.
PM.
But look, the second pain you also mentioned was like getting lost in the details, right? And you said you were a recovering perfectionist. You actually said I recovered, but I have no question that's a lie. And I'm going to say you're a recovering perfectionist. So one of the things you mentioned is about how your background takes you there, right? Because you have a technical background. Not all PMs have a technical background. And in that way, when somebody comes with an idea that sounds great and it's fantastic, like it sounds amazing, all you can think about is how hard it is to make that, right? And all the technical challenges and all the blockers and so on. It reminds me, when I was a kid, I joined the music conservatorium, like playing guitar, and I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix, right? And all of a sudden, I'm sitting with a guy that tells me how to trim my nails and how to put my elbow, right? And how like that. Yeah. And I was like, dude, like all of these things you're teaching me are making it so much worse for me, because the things that I used to enjoy, you're telling me they're all wrong. Now that I know this knowledge, I cannot unknow it, right? I just have it, and I feel like I'm doing wrong things, and it limits your creativity, right? Yeah. So from that perspective, do you feel a little bit like that when it comes to product, right? Like I come in and say, hey, I have this fantastic idea for a product, and all you can see are blockers and why that couldn't happen, instead of actually getting excited about the vision?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. I think at this point, of course, coming from a technical background where you're deep into the how are we going to build this, what kind of risks we have, what kind of blockers we might come across. And then I was a dev, 3 years ago, 4 years ago still. And then even after that, I was still doing a lot of technical stuff at start, if you know, like really deep into it. And then it's like, if you take the same mindset as a PM, eventually I find myself a lot more finding the reasons why you can't do it than the reason why you can't do it. So I think it helps to be naive a lot of times, or
plainly ignorant, right? It's great to not know stuff sometimes.
Or know stuff and be like, just no, I'm not gonna look at that stuff.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
And it's easy to with that background to get into that habit of, okay, how are we gonna build this? Okay, what service is gonna work with what service? And then, that's like one thing adds to another. And eventually what you're trying to convince that, okay, maybe we should just remove these things, these certain features from this iteration, or to make sure that we can deliver it in time and all that, which also helps, it helps to know how are you going to iteratively bring this product or idea to life. Yeah. But at the same time, I think for me at least, I've learned that the less I try to delve into how, the more actually it's helpful, and it's also good for your engineering team. Because if I'm the person who's always in there, trying to be the person who knows too much, it just doesn't help.
Sometimes you just gotta play it by ear, right? Like you sometimes you just don't know where it's gonna go, right? Yeah. We assume we know, but not always.
Yeah, exactly, and there's a right balance. That being said, it helps to know the technical knowledge also, because if somebody's trying to tell you that, oh, this is not possible, then you can give them 10 reasons why it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, but it can backfire as well, right? Because the technical boundaries can always be pushed. And sometimes you can be extremely convinced that that's not doable just because, I've tried it before. And there's always somebody that it's crazy enough to go and push those boundaries and actually pull it off, right? Like there's always a possibility. So that's cool. Okay. In the other thing is that perfectionism, or in this case, the detail attention, often leads to decision paralysis, right? Often leads to like procrastination, and I'll do this when I have all of the research and when I finish all of this stuff. What have you found in your career that can allow you to say, okay, this one gets shipped, right? Like, is there something when you're working on a product that makes you say, okay, this is the shipping point, and then I know there's going to be problems, but this is where I establish it? Or is that a gut feeling? How does that go for you?
It has changed over the years. So initially, how it used to be for me that I wanted to ship something that is completely perfect and it has all the bells and whistles,
so you shipped once every 2 years a new feature.
No, I've never shipped with that long of, but it's a point that that project gets closer to deadline, and I build up so much anxiety that, okay, so we have still so much to do and it's still not there. It's purely that you build up that anxiety, and then in your mind you are like, okay, we are still so far back, but in reality your product has made so much progress that even if you put it out, there's going to be a lot of data that comes for people. So how it has changed for me over the years is that the hunger to get that data, the sooner you put it out, the more data you can get and the more unknowns you can uncover. And then if that could mean that, okay, sacrificing some, how do you say, some things which you can put into a second iteration. I keep saying you, by the way, so just know for the context, I mean me.
I feel like you and I are one person, so it's okay. It's okay.
But yeah, it's like, okay, how to break those things down so we can ship them fast. And once we ship them fast, the more time we want by ourselves for the next iteration, but and also we get a lot more data. And that's how it has changed over time. And one thing I'm still really stubborn on is putting out something that just is broken,
So I was going to take you there because I do know you're stubborn, and I wanted to say, so what about, so this is one that's interesting for me because we were talking about customers and how they don't always know what they want, but sometimes they're right, and how hard it is to get that balance right. When it comes to a customer telling you, like, guys, I just need this, even if it's the crappiest version you can pull off next quarter, please. And then your ego kicks in, or like, hey, I am either me or the company reputation or whatever. I cannot just ship this like thing. It needs to be to our high standards, and then your whole manual about high standards come in and whatnot. But the customer is literally telling you, I don't care if it's crappy, right? I just want it now. How do you feel about those situations? Are you the kind of like, okay, let's just give it to them, even if it's crappy, or do you pull out the manual?
No, so that's the thing. I believe in like putting things out, even if they're not fully productized. If they're scrappy, it's all good. That's how we built Start Connect. It was initially there was no face of the product. I was building behind the scenes all these flows. I wrote a whole blog post about this journey. That's the thing. I truly believe in just put something out there, solve the problem, get the data, and that also helps with a lot of understanding what they want. That helps you build this relationship with the customer of a feedback lifecycle where they can tell you a little bit more about, not a little bit, a lot more about how certain things should work. So I do believe in putting things out there faster helps a lot more than, making them perfect, having that certain ego where you are like, no, it needs to be the standard. It needs to be pixel perfect.
But that's a thing that's interesting for me, what you just mentioned, right? The ego, because I think there's two sides of this. One of it is like, sure, like we don't want our company to suffer from shipping something that's bad, right? Especially in the early days where you need to prove yourself and you have these early customers that you need to make loyal. But on the other hand, I think a lot of it is driven by our own egos, right? Like I want this to be of a certain standard because I want to show it off, right? Or I want to tell people, hey, I built this. And at some stages, the customer might not even care at that stage. They just want it now,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not just ego. It could also be fear. I've got to
True.
learn. I've got to learn about fear over the years a lot more, and then it could also be that there's like a part of you which is, which is telling you that, oh my God, if you mess this up, nobody's gonna trust you anymore. You might potentially lose your job. So you want to make sure this is all good. And I think you need to confront those fears and one, of course, make sure that you don't start shipping everything that's broken, but at the same time, it's like you need to confront those fears and insecurities and be like, hey, it's okay to not be, I keep coming back to pixel perfect, but it's like getting something out which solves the problem is a lot better than getting something out which solves the problem, but it's also super nice looking, and it's also super like the best quality in the world. Then you might ship something so much later that the time has passed or the customer has moved on or the market has moved on.
Yeah, so, in a way, it's risk aversity as well, right? So what you were saying, right? So basically, nobody got fired for doing the sound thing. Like nobody got fired for doing exactly what everybody expected you to do, right? The only issue is that nobody got great doing that either, right? Like, so you're like, okay, what's your marketing plan? In my case, sure, here are some Google ads, here are some Facebook ads. Oh, that was exactly what I was expecting. Great.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get fired if I say that. Now, if I say I want to dress a guy in Dam Square like a chicken and do hula dance, people are going to be like,
and that's where ownership, that's where ownership comes in, or something we discussed earlier, being the CEO of product or the founder of product. When you think with that mindset, you don't think about being insecure. When you're a founder or a CEO, your job or how your mindset is to make sure the company is successful. And let's say if you are in the early days of the company, you'll do everything to make sure that that customer gets what they want, and then it helps solve their problem, even if it's crappy. And I think once you start adapting to that mindset, the whole worry about getting failing or let's say getting fired, that's like the extreme situation. But that's eventually where all the insecurities lead to. People don't want to fail, and then sometimes it's because they have personal reasons. The society is a huge reason. People in general, failure is never nice.
True.
So I think once you adapt the mindset of a founder, where you are able to run through walls and learn from it, then those insecurities goes away. And then one thing I want to add on that is feedback. I think always there's something learned from Start a lot, the culture we have there. That be open to feedback from everyone and make sure to communicate people around you that, hey, that I'm open to feedback, and then once things put out, you look for that feedback from the customer and then the stakeholders, so that you can think of yourself as the product, which you can iterate over. And that
makes a lot of sense. And like moving on to the third pain, right? Because it's highly related to this one as well. Like you mentioned, like moving fast without causing issues that will haunt you later, right? In a way, it's only human that we try to predict every possible outcome of a situation. In reality, it's impossible, right? We never can. How big of a source of stress is this to you when you have to let go of a new product, or have you gotten rid of that over the years doing this work? That you haven't seen every little angle before you ship, right, of things that could go wrong.
Yeah, so that's where I think initially it was like being a product manager, I felt really responsible for every part, even the technical part. And what I've learned over the years, that this is where your counterparts need to be on the same level of decision making and the same level of accountability, that they need to tell you that, hey, this is not a good decision, or like they need to be accountable for the quality. If you as a PM are pushing, and somewhere along the way that is going to compromise the quality, it's possible that with everything that's going on in the day, it's easy to lose the context of that. So that's where the counterparts come in, where they are able to constantly factor that in. And then comes a point where you need to make a decision that, okay, should we ship it and then be a little bit of wary of the quality, and then things take a shortcut, which we know that will come back to us. And I, to be honest, don't have an answer still to that. Once you reach that crossroads, which direction do you lean towards more?
Yeah.
And
Does it happen to you though that sometimes you ship something and you can tell exactly which problem is gonna cause later on? So you're like, okay, I'm shipping this today. I know that in a few months from now, these are the problems that this is gonna have, or usually that's really unexpected.
I think if you could do that to the point, you would be, I don't know, a god. But
yeah, but sometimes you cannot fix them, right? You know, like I know this will be a problem, but I cannot fix it today. I'm just gonna ship it, and I'll make a note to fix this later. You know?
Yeah, so I think that's where knowing the capability of what you're shipping, the product you're building, its capability comes in handy. So, for example, if you're building a car, again, hardware product, you know what's the top speed, right? You know, and let's say if you ship something and then you know that, okay, we could possibly get top speed to 200, but since we are shipping it early, we need to compromise, and it's going to be 180. And if somebody pushes it to beyond 180, it's going to break and it's going to come back to us. Again, hardware product, for some reason, it's easier for me to give examples there.
Yeah.
But the point here is that same with the software. If you, let's say, ship, if you ship a product or a feature or a certain thing which is scalable to, let's say, 100 users, and you know beyond 100 users, it's going to be really complicated for you. It's going to make your life absolutely worse. Then you should know this at least a little bit, not to the point like exact number of the users,
yeah, of course,
but at least like know the capacity your product can handle. And that's where the risk, assessing the technical risk comes in, you know, that if you know the technical risk is that it's not scalable to beyond a certain point, then that's where it needs to be highlighted, be discussed with the counterparts, and understood that, okay, how are we going to deal with this technical debt? You know, technical debt is a huge thing.
Do you think, because these departments will product marketing, all of them in tech companies in particular, like people move jobs really quickly and people are just there for either a year or 2 years and then they jump ship or whatnot. Do you think that also leads sometimes to having a bit of a short term mindset, right? Like, so for example, I'm getting really pressured to deliver a lot of things really fast. And on my own, I know like this might cause issues, but I think like, well, when they cause these issues, they're either not going to fall on me or I'm not going to be here, and I'm delivering fast, right? Do you see that sometimes in when the environment is moving too fast? Because when you're moving fast, there is a trade-off, right? Like you cannot just pressure people to go really, really fast and at the same time expect that there are not trade-offs.
Yeah.
There are trade-offs, and some of those trade-offs might be that people just feel like, okay, I'll give you fast, but you know, do you see that happening sometimes when companies step on the gas?
With people, or are you asking with me?
No, in general, like in organizations, yeah.
Yeah, I can't talk about like the mindset of people, how they think, but yeah, of course, there are people who have a certain mindset. Of course, let's talk about the perfectionist or the person who wants to ship, you know?
Yeah.
If you have an environment where everything is moving so fast and it's necessity to ship rather than be perfect, the person who's a perfectionist is not going to fit in that environment. And on the other hand, if you have somebody who is thinking with a mindset like, hey, I'm not going to be here in a year anyway, this is my bridge to the next big thing, you know. And there are people who think like that, who are like, okay, every 2 years if you switch a job you get a higher salary, and that's, you know, but the point is that with that mindset you can't succeed in long term. You know, it's a lot about longevity, and I think both in short term and long term, you find a lot more success when you think about that. Okay, but you actually care about what you're building rather than how much are you shipping, because I think if you wake up every day and go to work with a mindset of when can we ship what we are building and how much features can we ship and all that, and I think it's a fundamentally wrong mindset. If you go to work every day thinking that, okay, I want to learn a lot more about what kind of problems our customers are coming across and what are we doing today to solve them, what kind of data can we uncover, and how can we build the best possible product for them and at the same time make our business a lot of money. You know, I think that's a mindset of a goal you're working towards. When you're talking about, like, let's say if you have a mindset of, if a certain person has a mindset of, let's say, checking off the list of tasks, you know, then that just is not a long-term mindset.
But
And it's
careful,
gonna,
like one thing is the mindset, right? And another thing is the thing that you think will make your manager happy as well, right? You know what I mean? Because it might not be
yeah,
your mindset, but
yeah,
the way to keep your manager happy or the way to keep the company, your OKRs or whatever they are, it's to just deliver these things as quickly as possible. Right. And in that way, you're like, okay, I want to keep my so sometimes you get forced out of your mindset, right, due to the organizational goals that are put on you, right, and that's difficult. And sure, as you become more senior, once in a while you might be able to say, you know what, guys, like I don't think these goals are right because they're creating the wrong incentives. But at some point, you also have to win that place in the organization, right? When you just come in, also you don't have a saying on those things. It's a bit difficult.
Yeah, so that's a good point, man. And again, it's it's just something inside me goes just dingling when I'm living to make my manager happy or my let's take it outside work, take example of your friend, if your friends are saying something and you just want to make sure they like you and you don't oppose them or you don't stand up and say what you really think, those friendships are not going to mean anything to you.
Yeah, true.
And same thing if you say take same mindset to work. If you are living to make your manager happy or the company happy, it's not going to fly. But at the same time, you need to find a way, and it's something you also gave me really good advice on. Find a way how you can balance these both. How can you make sure that you can move forward without just going in all guns blazing?
Yeah. What about moving fast again, right? So there are trade-offs. How do you deal with those? Because those can generate also a lot of frustration, right? I can imagine that when the organizational priority is to move fast, right? It's definitely to move fast.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are gonna left undone. There's a lot of things that are just gonna stay in a trunk for years and years to come. How do you deal with that frustration? Because you are not, your manager is going to say, dude, you're not going to get the time to get this the way you want it to be. We just need to keep going. We need to broaden our offering or whatever it is, right? How do you deal with that frustration today? Do you think better than before? Or do you prefer to be not in that situation?
When you talk about that, like there are certain things you want to do. Let's say if there are certain things my personal ego wants to do. Then,
for professional growth as well, right? Like you just want to learn something technically or whatever.
Yeah, then there's other ways to bring it up. I don't think these things are necessarily should be tied to the work the product work you're doing. If I'm really stuck on this thing this feature I want to build for the product because it's my ego is holding me against it and I'm just clinging on to it for so long, and it just doesn't make sense. But on the other hand, if it's like I'm really invested into that, okay, how do I give my customers superpowers? Then it becomes easy to just align across the board. And that's what over the years I've learned also, that there's also a lot of stuff which you see that, oh, this is not how it should be. And then I would love to change it. I would love to basically redo this whole thing. But is this the right time? And do I have all the time? Do I have all the time with everything that is going on? Is it, again, the same question, is it important?
Yeah.
Or is it urgent? Or is it like, where does it fit in that matrix? I think it's important, but is it urgent? Okay, why is it important? Then you start asking these questions.
Something that's interesting, because I mean, you joined MessageBird and you've been fully remote all the time, right? And you guys have been growing quite significantly, not only in revenue and so on, but in employees as well, like hiring a lot of people. There's and I spoke about this with John as well in the episode, John from Miro, like there's this assumption that more people means you move faster. Sometimes that's not the case, right? Sometimes you get a lot more people in, but there's a process, there's onboarding, there's people catching up, there's a lot of things, like sometimes things become more bureaucratic, there's more people to get on board with ideas, so things can become a bit slower even, right? There's the guy that used to do 20 things, but could do them all without asking anybody anything, now has to ask 10 people if they are okay with doing their part. right? How have you lived through that experience? Do you feel like, 10 people, it's right away faster, or that there's also like some pains with that, growing the team in size?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. So since my time at MessageBird, the team that I'm working with directly, we've added more people to it, but it's not gone from basically 1 to 100 scale, the direct team I work with.
Yeah.
But indirectly, of course, the company has gone from, since I joined, I think it was 330 people to now somewhere over 400. I don't know the exact number.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you can see on LinkedIn how many people work for MessageBird. But that's the point, that it's grown. But the point is that it has not grown without a reason, so to say. MessageBird carefully places people for the problems that exist. Yeah. And that's, I think I'm really happy there with the company, how that thinks, because sometimes I'm also working on things and I'm like, oh my God, if it would be moving so much faster if I had one extra set of team here to just deal with this little bit of stuff. Yeah. And then at the same time think that then I would need X amount of more hours in a day to manage that.
Yeah, true.
But going back to your point, I think the importance here is that MessageBird is adding more people, but it's a need, with the growth we are experiencing, not because, you have cash in the hand and you can go spend it everywhere you like.
No, of course.
So
no, and maybe there's a little bit of a growing pain there, that you become a bit slower at times, but then as those people start catching up, the machine starts moving faster altogether, right? There's an adjustment period, of course, but that's where it goes. The other one, and the last pain for today, it's innovating in highly saturated markets, right? It's really hard to innovate in highly saturated markets, and not only because of the saturation itself, but also because there are some really outdated solutions out there that, despite being outdated, are widely accepted, right? Yeah. And do you think that, to an extent, that market is going to say, like, we're happy with what is there, we've been using it for 30 years, like, leave it there? Do you think that innovation should be limited to the level that the market is willing to accept? Or do you think that you should push it further and the market will follow? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So...
And this is coming back to taking the CD out of the laptop, right? Like, probably that seemed like a shit idea back then.
Yeah, let me put it this another way. A lot of companies, a lot of softwares we see who are market leaders and who exist for a long time. They are pre-iPhone era, Yeah. And just to give you, just to set up the context, if you look at the oil industry, it's been around for 300 years, 400 years, something like that. And throughout that time, it evolved. And with that time, a lot of things evolved with it. The companies around it, the oil products and the regulations and all that. But when you think about the industry, or in general, what we are doing in the software industry, SaaS didn't exist up until a couple of years ago. And then it was like on-premise software. So let's say, just take since the internet was born, and then since it became like really hip and mainstream, from that point up until now, things have been moving so fast. And then what happened is that, and what I see a lot is, there have been these market leaders in certain spaces who exist pre-iPhone era. And the reason I say iPhone era is that since iPhone came out, the technology evolved 10x. We use everyday products now that didn't exist or wouldn't have existed if it was not for iPhone, because that accelerated the speed. And what that means is that all the products that existed pre that, they either had a choice to just adapt and then rethink how they are going to adapt to the mobile first world, or the mobile first the world that this mobile first world brings, the challenges it brings, or they stay the same and keep adding on top of the same functionality. So I work on Inbox, that's basically the MessageBird's product that we help companies talk to their customers on any channel that they prefer. And when we see certain things in the market, when I see certain products in the market, they've been built for so long. Why? What's the problem there is that they were built for email or phone calls, and then a WhatsApp channel, a messenger channel was an afterthought. So instead of like rethinking their whole strategy, some of them just took the easy route and then said that, okay, let's just find a quick and easy. Quick and easy doesn't mean that 2 days. It could also mean 2 years. To just add this channel and then, you know, add these customers. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the fundamentals of these products stay the same, and they have just adjusted a little bit to ensure that they can deal with this changing market.
Yeah.
And what that has presented is this, like, the whole mindset difference between people who are of, let's say, pre-iPhone era, who've been working, and then people like me who started working in 2013, like the jobs, and then you have Gen Z. There's a huge shift between how all these people think about innovation, and that's
what's interesting is that, you know, a lot of companies think of innovation in a very self-centered way, and they strive to become the product they want to become, regardless of the product customers truly need. Right? So you say, well, now there is machine learning out there. So I want my messenger solution to inbox solution to have AI built in with machine learning. And then the market might be like, cool, I don't give a crap, right? Like, so often we want to strive to become the cooler product and the best product, as we were saying, the one with the most features. Besides what the market is telling us they want, right? How do you think you can find that balance between becoming an innovator, but not thinking your innovation so far that your customers are like, "What are you doing?" You know, like that, we don't even want that.
So the innovating for the sake of innovating is always wrong, and that's what you see sometimes in corporates. They have a department called the innovation department, and will find people called head of innovation, and I think that's just like BS, you know. I don't know if we can swear here, but
you can say bullshit, no worries about it.
So that's bullshit. It's like, you shouldn't innovate for the sake of innovation. It should be the mindset of you as a company that you are thinking ahead of the market. You're thinking ahead of the customers in terms of how can we deliver this amazing. If you want to use AI, let's just take example of AI. You know,
everything has AI. The microwave is coming soon with AI.
Like, a great example is Google. Gmail uses AI, and you're typing a sentence and it just completes it for you. I think that's something I never have asked Google that please build this in for me. But in my opinion, that's the way AI is built in, right? To be
invisible but be there when you need it, right? In a way.
Yeah, exactly. Solves a problem that you didn't need. You didn't think that you needed to be solved. Exactly. And then you have these other applications of AI, which are there for the sake of the company being able to say that, yes, we are innovative, and then we have the technologies like AI and blockchain. There was a huge influx of these blockchain also. So going back to the point, I think innovation for the sake of innovation is wrong, but innovating to think ahead of the market and understand that, okay, how do we use technologies that exist? How do we use how do we innovate further in the market where we are able to challenge the status quo? If I think about the product I'm working on, I think that the legacy companies who might be widely accepted, they have set a wrong precedent in terms of not only how the product is built, but also around how the people who use this product are being evaluated. So
something that's interesting when it comes to to saturated markets is that it really comes down to positioning, right? Like, you really need to make it easy for your consumer to understand where you stand next to the other options in the market, right? Traditionally, this has been a marketing function, right? From back in the day, like pre-iPhone, right? It has more and more become something that products is involved in as well. How do you see this? Do you see this as a marketing function, as a product function, as an organizational function? Because this is part of those things that the walls have been taken down but they have been taken down in a very messy way. So even though there is like people not working in silos anymore, there's still a lot of like, okay, but who really owns this kind of feeling in organizations? How do you see positioning in particular?
I think positioning of your product, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Positioning of your product or your business. I think it's not entirely up to one person. Of course, there is, of course, this is where the collaboration comes in. You know, as a product manager, I can't say that, just you deal with it. I don't really care about how we position. I'm just busy on building features.
Let me know and I'll build it, right? Yeah.
It's going to be out on the 1st of August, and by then you should have the positioning ready. It's more like collaborating, sitting together and going that, okay, how do we work together on the positioning of it? How do we, what kind of the market segment are we addressing? You know, who's our target audience? Then how do we position our product to them? And then let's just say you are building a product who has more than one market segment. How do you position it for all these different segments? And that's something, you know, you can't say that this is not, you know, I can't, as a product manager, I can't say, well, this is not my responsibility. It should be marketing's job to do.
Yeah, but it still happens though in real life, right? Because in theory, yes, right, that's how it should work. But in large organizations in particular, it does happen that marketing has an idea of where the product sits, and all of a sudden there are things happening in another shop that you only find out when they get shipped or something, right? And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, my homepage says that we are the best because of X, Y, or Z, and all of a sudden we're putting machine learning into this thing, and I didn't know that was a thing for us. So it's easy to lose track of those things. Do you think that in a fast-moving organization, do you guys manage to like keep these things in order, or is something that you just play it by ear and you'll see how things go, right? Because it's moving so fast.
One thing I want to say, you can't guess stuff, you know. I can't say, well, you know, let's see what we're building this and marketing this, doing something, and eventually things will align. Let's see what comes out at the end.
Yeah, I know, of course.
So that's where alignment becomes super critical.
Yeah.
And if you remember in Start,
we did a lot of that together. Yeah.
It's also not, sometimes I was too busy with the features and getting things out the door, where John was more doing this alignment, and then we were working in this triangle, you know. I think it's also that's where you need to, me personally, I need to leverage, and I do leverage people who are around me. For example, senior PMs, or like you have the same structure in the marketing org. Yeah. It's like, okay, how do we manage each other's time efficiently and still make sure we are aligned? And that's like a short answer. I don't know. Do you want to go deeper into this?
No, it's okay. I have one last one before we move into the resources. And the last one is about data-drivenness and everything. So for the last decades, we've been all obsessed with data. Everything has been data-driven. So we try to back up every decision with data. And sure, it is better than opinions, but also it's not perfect, right? And I do believe there is a risk of claiming that it is or believing that it is, because it can lead to the wrong decisions. So usually when you come up with a truly innovative idea, it will be rare that you can back it up with data. And this is because, after all, the problem with data is that it always shows the past. And a truly innovative idea, it's all about the untapped potential that this might have in the future, right? So when you're really saying something like, I don't know what it is, the iPhone, how could you back that up with data? Like, can you show me data that people are going to love touchscreens on a mobile phone? No.
Yeah.
Because nobody has done it, right? Like, what do you want? And then are we going to put in a $400 million investment behind something that you cannot back up with data? Yes. And look at them now, right? But now we're all used to like, where's the data, right? Or I don't move a finger.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Have you experienced a little bit of that when you try to innovate and it gets pushed back because of this?
In general, there are two ways one can look at data, and I try to always look at it from two standpoints. One, what kind of problems can data tell me? You know, if I look at data, what kind of customer problems is it going to tell me? Not like, okay, the feature usage and all that kind of stuff, but like, what is it about the customer that I don't know and this data tells me? If let's say 1 plus 1 doesn't 1 plus 1 should be 2, or and you look at the data, and then when you go deeper into those ones, and then you're looking, okay, wow, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
It's like how are people using your product, or how are they not using your product? So that's one way you can look at data. The other is that, in general, I've experienced, and I'm personally also sometimes guilty of it, that try to back up the thing you really want with data that you can find. It's like your own something you really, really want, and then you just draw up some data to make sure that, hey,
it's
look at
weaponized,
this data.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen it with the goddamn coronavirus, right? Like people want to prove a point, and they're like, you see, we see that in this country we are the highest infected in the world. Yeah, because you grabbed like 10 people in it, right? And you grab like one neighborhood or something. So you can weaponize data as well, because you can put it in a spreadsheet, make it to your liking, and you can back up any idea you want to back up.
Yeah. And then to your point, that have there been pushback, and where you like, okay, your instinct is telling you one thing, but the data is telling you another thing.
Yeah.
I think that's where it comes from. Like, I personally not experienced this too much, because I haven't launched like an iPhone level product. But this is exactly like, if you go back to Start Connect, this is exactly the thing which data wasn't telling us to build that product, I'm sorry, other way around. Like, the data was telling us one thing, but then I had a really, really strong one instinct, but at the same time data was telling me that, okay, this needs to be productized. But what data was that? It's like working with the customers and understanding how they use this, what kind of requests they have. And then yes, there was some pushback, and then eventually also there was a lot of buy-in.
I guess overall, if you want to be in a really innovative organization, that needs to be a mindset thing that people share, right? Like, but what you see in reality is that your CEO can tell you, we really want to innovate. Hey, how about this? Where's the data?
Yeah.
Right. Where's the research that tells me that for sure is going to pay off? Well, taking chances is what innovation is all about, right?
Yeah. So it's taking chances, but also seeing things before anybody else can see it. And when I say anybody else, I mean that people who are even looking at data. So it could also be that you're looking at the same data, you see something that everybody else misses.
Yeah.
And it's like we think about, like, okay, the iPhone, we think that, okay, it was a complete just left field innovation. But like Steve Jobs looked at something we looked every day and chose to ignore. The keyboard on the Blackberries and all that, and then the small screen.
The classic Ballmer quote that it was an awful email machine and it was not going to go anywhere. For Microsoft.
So it's also that I don't think the innovation is that, or like things like this where you don't use data, the data that you pull out of tools to justify it. What I mean is that, how do you see things that other people don't see? Because that's where also the source of all these left field innovations comes
True.
out.
I just think that a lot of people might see them as well, and they're shy to say them because they don't have a business case to support them sometimes, right? And I think that's a shame, right? Because you're like, oh, I had this amazing idea, but if I just put it out, people are gonna look at me like a madman because I don't have a business case of 5 pages to support it. Then we might be losing out on a lot of great ideas that in a different setup people would just spit out, and we might have a laugh, or we might say like, holy shit, that's amazing, right? So
think of some of the products that are out there who are going crazy. Like think of think of TikTok. Imagine this person being at a really big org and they're presenting this data and people presenting this idea, and people are like, we need a business case around it. And then once you hear that, you have two things you can do. You can write out that business case. Actually, you can do 3 things. You can write out the business case, start pulling out data. You can just leave that idea in your backlog forever, or you pursue it at all costs. And then imagine this person was at a big company, and then the only way for them to pursue this idea at all costs was to leave that company and pursue it, separately. And I've seen over the years, a lot of people have done that, you know.
Yeah, true.
A lot of successful products out there could have been another Google product, but you see ex-Googler who left the company and built this amazing product because they couldn't pursue this idea in the company because of all the bureaucratic elements around it.
Yeah, true. All right, man. We're wrapping up to the last bit, so let's start talking about some resources. Do you have some fun stuff you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, so in terms of resources, man, I'm lately a lot more into podcasts because it's just I can listen it and still do other stuff in my day. So one of the things I listen to is it's a podcast called My First Million. Mm-hmm. It's a gimmicky name, but it's from Sean Puri and Sam Parr. So they invite a lot of different people. For example, I've listened to the one where they invited the founder of Lambda School.
Uh-huh.
And then they just talk about their to them in a genuine setting, you know, no sugarcoating, nothing. That's something I listen to every now and then. But cool. Other than that, yeah. One thing also is that I'm super invested into compounding and building this mindset and physical, both mentally and physically building this longevity. And I found this person really helpful there. He's an MMA coach. His name is Firas Zahabi.
Uh-huh.
And the best resource I can recommend from him is it's a bit where he's talking to Joe Rogan on his podcast, and it's about a 30-minute bit out of this 2-hour or 3-hour interview where he's talking about basically the perceived rate of exertion. So basically what he's trying to say is that you don't let yourself get exhausted. You know, you can go to gym and then pump iron and then, you know, exceed that rate of exertion and then be really sore next day. But instead what you do is just quit that day before you reach that point so that you can continue the next day. Because then what you can do is build you can train a lot more over the longer period of time, you know, and then mentally also that's what I'm trying to build. Like, okay, how can I get 1% better every day? So in the really long term, I can build this longevity rather than try to do something really quick.
Cool, man. Cool. I'm going to add to that. We were talking about perfectionism a lot. There's a TED Talk by a guy called Thomas Curran. He's a social psychologist. I think it's really cool because it also talks a lot about the things that you were mentioning, like how damaging... Thomas Curran, Corran. I'm going to put it in the links for the people watching on YouTube. But it's super interesting. It's a 15-minute talk, but it's around how damaging it is and how our generations, I'm saying our generations, I'm kind of like putting myself in there, but I'm a bit older, but maybe the new generations, right? Like the Gen Zers or the full-on millennials are so prone to all of this mental illness and all of these issues just because we all think we all need to be Bill Gateses, right? And we all think we all need to be Elon Musk's or whatever. So I think it's a super interesting thing because we're not perfect and we should be fine with that, and hopefully everybody listening to this podcast knows that by now. So really cool, man. Really cool to have you. Really cool catching up. I'll call you some other day so we can catch up on other stuff too. But thank you for coming and happy to see you.
Thanks a lot, man.
All right,
great
guys.
To be here.
See you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Growth Pains.